Thank you for being here. We will go ahead and kick it off.
All right, well, we're really excited for you guys to join us. One of the things that we do here at PSE is a safety moment when there's any more than three coming to a meeting. It's just our way of kind of being hyper-focused on safety and committed to both our employees and our customers. So this one is in regards to the 3 Ps of safe winter driving. We want to make sure that you prepare for that trip. Check your battery and tire tread and your wipers. You know, a lot of cars have been sitting around more often than not these days due to COVID. And so oftentimes you might be even experiencing some low tire pressure. So make sure to check those before you head out, as well as have an emergency preparedness kit on hand and in the trunk of your car. When it does happen and you have that stalled vehicle or stopped, you want to make sure that you stay with your car, not walk away and try to find help, because oftentimes somebody will be driving past. And you want to plan your route ahead of time. So this is not only important in any car, but also in EVs, as we'll get to later. Protect yourself and others. You know, make sure you buckle up, and that children 12 and under are much safer in the back seat than in the front seats, just due to those airbags. And then the last one is prevent crashes on the road. Make sure that you've got an increased distance between cars during kind of our inclement weather, and that you keep an eye out for pedestrians walking on the road. It's getting much darker these days, and a lot of times you can't see people as easily as normal. And then get plenty of rest before a trip and stop whenever you need to. Take a little cat nap in that vehicle. And that is our safety moment.
Cool.
So I am Melissa Ann Troy. I'm with our customer outreach team. I'm also the outreach electric vehicle liaison for our team as well. And next to me is?
My name is Trayvon Scott. Nice to see everybody. I am a energy advisor, part of the product development team. And in my photo, that's my lovely companion, Carmelo. He might yap in the background from time to time. And I will be responding to some of the inquiries on the electric vehicles that some of you guys might have later on in the future. And then accompanying us, we have
Leslie Myers. Hi, I'm Leslie Myers. I work with Melissa on the outreach team, and I used to be the liaison for the EV program. So before Melissa was with PSE, I've been with PSE for about 3.5 years. And back when I was liaison, I worked more closely with
me. I'm Megan Lochter. I work on the community involvement team, and which is also informally called the events team. And I've been with PSE for about 2.5 years. So thanks again for being here today.
Great. We just want to thank everybody for being here today and for attending this special event that we have. Just so you guys all know, you'll be entered in for a chance to win a trunk organizer and a $75 Fred Meyer's gift card. Plus, you'll also be able to get 2 PSE goodies. Might be able to get something like this. Oh, PSE Up and Go electric mug thermos. You can't really see it. Screen's in the way. And then you'll also be entered for a chance to win the grand prize, which is our electric bike from Rad Power Bikes. And you will be notified after the event today on the winners. So stay tuned and have your email addresses ready. So to start us off, we like to kick it over to Melissa. We got a little game in store for everyone.
Yeah, this one is our classic spin the wheel game. So we're going to go ahead and spin it, see what kind of questions might come up. And then if you happen to know the answer, please go ahead and chat us, and you might be right. Let's see.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a drum roll. So what kind of EV questions do you think we'll get? Let's see. Oh, EV batteries, true or false? Electric vehicle drivers are likely need to pay to replace a battery at some point. Is that true or false? Looks like Clarence says true. Michael says after 8 years. We've got Josh saying false. Leslie, what do you think?
false.
False. Let's see who's right.
Yeah. So, so Leslie, why do you think that is false?
Well, the batteries last for a really long time, and most of them have a warranty for 80 to 100,000 miles. So most of us don't drive our cars that long. If we're looking at buying a well-loved EV farther in the future, that might be something. But right now, there's just not that kind of inventory and used market.
Excellent. Let's spin again. All right, charging and range. True or false? Most fully electric vehicles have a range of only 100 miles or so per charge. Oh, it looks like everyone's got this one. They all are chiming in saying it's false. And that definitely might have been true way back in the day, but you know, these days we've got a lot of vehicles that are on the road that for EV that have really long ranges that are available. So let's go ahead and show the answer. Yep, definitely. So everyone gets a gold star today. We all know that that answer is false. Okay, and then let's just go ahead and finish it up with a quick poll. What's the biggest reason you've been interested in driving an electric vehicle? You know, this is something that we all kind of want to know. Chime in on your thoughts. Is it the benefit to the environment, saving on fuel or maintenance, the convenience of charging at home, or something else? So be able to click on that poll, and let's take a look to see what everyone who's joined us today has to say.
A few good answers there.
Yeah, I love wands. Yep, no gas stations, right? The performance and then not having to deal with a gas station, that's huge.
Mm-hmm. All of the answers above. Kevin.
So it looks like the majority of the benefits to the environment definitely outweigh all the rest of the benefits for owning an electric vehicle. But saving on fuel and maintenance is definitely a close second. I know that, you know, we all love having the benefit of more money in your wallet is definitely an important factor, but also making sure that we're taking care of our environment. So great job, everyone.
Nice. All right, and then so let's go ahead and change pace just a little bit here. So one thing, switching to an EV can save up to about, you know, around $10,000. So one thing that, you know, people are always interested is, you know, the savings that people will receive from switching to EVs. According to Consumer Report studies, long-term owners' costs for EVs are around $6,000 to $10,000 less compared to our conventional gas engine cars, even when factoring the higher upfront costs for pricings of EVs. So your primary areas for savings is going to be around fuel, maintenance, and incentives. They're all going to come together to help offset those costs there for you. And we also do have a link where it's going to be some end of the year savings and blogs for some of the vehicles that roll out in 2020. There's a link that we will drop in the chat so that you guys can take a look at that and to kind of glance through some of those deals that also are available for some of those vehicles there. And so along with switching to EVs, you know, one of the biggest things that people are concerned about is the pricing for fuel and how that's going to compare for an EV and also the regular gas conventional car. So on average, we can, next slide, sorry. On average, so with a conventional car, you're going to spend around $3.25 per gallon. And so, you know, you're going to have to multiply that by, you know, the size of your tank, get your drive range, and along with, you know, the fuel efficiency of your car. So on our average, we're getting about like 29 miles per gallon with this fabulous, looks like a Subaru Outback that we got here on file for us. And so with that, you're going to get your range around 478 miles, and then it's going to cost you roughly about $1,681 a year. Switch the sides to the EV. We have a nice Nissan Leaf here. It's going to cost you about 9 cents per kilowatt hour just to charge, and then just to get a full charge of that, it's going to be $3.60 almost, and then give you about 150 miles for range. And then we're going to do that with an average driving about 15,000 miles each year. It's going to cost nearly about $360. And to put that in the better perspective in terms for people, So if we're going to take on a daily commute, so most people are probably driving for like 30 miles to work, 30 miles back, about 60 miles. So let's say if you live in like Federal Way or Tacoma, you got to drive to Seattle. So that's going to cost you roughly about almost $8 just in gas. Whereas if you had an EV, it's going to be just about $1.20. So with that, you know, you could go pick up a cup of coffee, go get some biscuits or anything like that, whatever or some tea if that's your thing there. So with those savings, not only is it just going to come from just driving and fuel alone, but it's also maintenance that's involved as well. So the big thing, you know, with your conventional car, there's a lot of things you have to spend on. Oil changes, oil filters, coolants, tire rotations, air filters, transmission fluids. The list goes on, you know, and if you have the luck like me, your exhaust system falls off of every car that you own. So switching to an EV, that's going to be something you probably don't have to worry about. So, you know, there's not really much you have to maintain, just besides, you know, your brakes, your brake fluids, and air filters, and your brake pads, and obviously tire rotation, and topping off some of your windshield fluids, and keeping the car looking clean here and there. So definitely you can expect to save a lot of money, good portions of money for having that switch there. And Miss Leslie, you actually have your own EV. You've made the switch. So I was wondering, have you experienced any large differences with that transition there from your old car to your new one?
Maintenance-wise, or I mean, no. There's been almost no maintenance. I had a flat tire, but that would have happened to me no matter what I was driving. The cost is way down. When I was commuting every day, I was probably spending about $200 a month on gas, just kind of getting around doing my errands and getting around work. And now I spend, well, even when I was still commuting, I spent next to nothing to charge my car in order to get around town.
That's great. I like to hear that. So just another prime example of a personal experience. And so along with just those savings alone, there's additional savings that are available. So there are multiple incentives that are available for purchasing an EV. So you can get up to about you can save up to $9,000 when purchasing an EV through incentives. So there's the federal incentive and also state incentives. So with the federal incentive, you can receive up to $7,500 on a tax bill or tax return. And some of these models are actually, depending on the model. So Tesla models and Chevy Bolts are excluded from this because they've reached their product sale limit. So with those, you're not going to be able to receive that. And then in addition, with the Washington State tax incentive, there is purchasing a brand new EV, as long as it's under $40,000, you could receive up to savings of $1,625. And then along with purchasing a used EV that is under $30,000, you could save up to $1,400. And one thing I do encourage you guys, everybody, to take a look into, you know, whomever you're handling your taxes with to get more definite answers or numbers when filing your taxes and everything. And also the dealers where you are purchasing these vehicles are also going to have really tailored information about how much money you would actually be able to write off or receive for these. We are not tax professionals, but we like to point you guys all in the right direction.
No, we're not. But I lived through the process, and it was pretty painless. First of all, I paid no sales tax when I bought the car. And then in February, I got my tax refund, and it was pretty nice to get one that was as big as it was because of the $7,500 tax credit. I've also seen a couple of comments come through about the registration fees and how there is some extra money that's charged when you register an EV. And I just wanted to point out that from my perspective, that the extra money that you pay that I pay when I register my car every year is pretty much just paying the tax that I would normally have been paying at the gas pump if I was going to gas stations on a semi-weekly basis. So really, instead of stretching it out over 52 weeks, of gas and kind of incrementally paying into the taxes to help keep the roads paved and things like that. I just pay for it all at once. That's my perspective.
Nice. That's a nice way to break it down for people, because I feel like a lot of people just probably don't know about all the taxes that are involved when purchasing gas. It's kind of hidden. It's not like on a receipt or anything for people to see that. So yes, let's see here. So, Miss Leslie, since you are our personal EV owner and driver, would you like to share a little bit of an experience that you've been having? My first question for you is going to be, what went into your decision making specifically on selecting your EV that you have?
Sure. So yeah, I've had my EV since the summer of 2019. I have a Volkswagen e-Golf. That's the picture on the right. That's the day that I brought it home. You can even kind of see the temporary dealer tag reflecting in the window. And really this slide sort of shows a little bit about my evolution into the decision to buy. As I mentioned earlier, I was the EV program liaison for PSE from 2018 to 2019. And one of the things that I was responsible for doing was making sure that we could get the cars to our ride-in drives to make sure that there were test drives that we could put together. And I don't know how many people on the call have been to one of our ride-in drives, but they're really fun and we hope to get back to them at some point. So my role was really to get the cars to the ride-in drives. And the picture on the left is at a media event that we put together to advertise our ride-in drives. And so some of the dealers and some of the private owners came to this media event to let reporters ride along in their car. And so that's me kind of talking with one of the dealers about the EV. And that's also the day that I first test drove my e-Golf. The picture on the right is the day that I brought it home a couple of weeks later. So I had been learning as part of the program, working on the program, about the benefits and how much driving EV went along with my environmentally minded self. And I was kind of thinking maybe I needed a new car. I was driving a little bit of an older car. It was inefficient, and it had some troubles, and it needed to have some repairs, and I wasn't sure I wanted to keep investing in it. So I was thinking about getting an EV. At the media event, I test drove the e-Golf. I test drove a couple of other cars, and then a couple of weeks later, I went and I bought myself an e-Golf.
Nice. Nice.
So Leslie, I'm curious, what was your initial impression after becoming an electric vehicle owner? Like, what are some of the things that you experienced?
Well, one of the things, and it still goes on today, is that when people find out I have an electric vehicle, they're really curious about it. They want to see it. They want to look under the hood. They want to maybe test drive it. People are just really, really curious about electric vehicles in general. And so it just became one of those things where I suddenly became, in my friend group, the expert, people texting me questions, people sort of, wanting to know more. And whenever the car is around, people want to look at it and touch it. So that's one of the biggest first impressions that still, to this day, a year and a half down the road, still lingers. I'm still getting questions about it. And in fact, I was out for dinner a couple of weeks ago before the second shutdown. And somebody that I was at the table with, they were like, well, oh, you have an EV? What do you think about the e-Golf? And I was like, oh, I have an e-Golf. And she's like, I just bought one too. And so it was just really kind of exciting to make that connection with people.
That's great. Sounds like you've established a small community of EV drivers, like, since you have one now.
Yeah.
With that, since you've it's been about like a year, I believe you said, that since you've had your EV. Have you been experiencing any driving or range anxiety now that you've switched over?
No, my car gets enough range for me to be pretty comfortable with it. When just driving around Puget Sound, around the Seattle metropolitan area, my office is in Bellevue. I go see Melissa in Tacoma. I live in South Seattle. Like, there is enough range on that car to take me around without any kind of concern. Now, really early when I had the car, I decided to push it. And there was one day when I got it down to only 25 miles left on the range, and I was just like, oh my gosh. But I got home, I was able to trust the dial. It certainly wasn't anywhere near dead. And then I just plugged it in. When I was commuting on a regular basis, I just plugged it in every night, and it was really no sweat. It's basically like I left my home every morning with a full tank.
Nice.
Well, and speaking of that, you know, David in our chat box has actually kind of asked about planned trips. So having that like lower mile range, you know, what do you do to get ready for planned trips when you've got maybe an extended trip going on?
It does take a little bit of extra planning. One of the first things I did when I bought the EV was I decided to take it on a little road trip. I really felt that until I pushed it and experienced the road trip, I wasn't really going to be able to talk about it and encourage other people to buy an EV. So I really wanted to experiment with that. And it does take a little bit of extra planning. I think that the benefits, cost-wise and environmentally-wise, far outweigh the extra thinking that goes into it, but I have learned a few things. I always map out where I'm going to go, and I use the PlugShare app to see about where. I have a couple of places where I want to see where I think that's where I'm going to stop and charge. I have a couple of favorites now. I have family in Portland, so I always know exactly where I'm going to stop. Three Rivers Mall on the way to Portland and charge up there. The other thing that I always do is before I leave on the trip, I open up all those apps, because since I don't charge out in public or on the go very often, because I mostly charge at home, you get signed out of the apps if you haven't used them in a while. So I always open up the apps, make sure I've got my password, and everything is kind of like up and running, so that when I get to the charging station, I can feel confident that I'm going to be able to log in and use it. I also always check the PlugShare app before I make those drives too, to make sure somebody else logged in recently to confirm that charging station is operational. That's one of the challenges about this stage, and when we're trying to electrify transportation, is that there are charging stations out there, but there's a lot of competing companies with different brands behind them. They have different apps. They have different standards of maintenance. And so it's one of the benefits of using the PlugShare app is that app it collects all of the different charging stations, and people in the EV community check in whenever they're using it and kind of confirm what their experience was. So I'm always able to see, okay, I go to that Three Rivers Mall and Kelso, okay, somebody charged there 2 days ago. It's going to be fine when I get there.
It's nice. Sounds like it's almost like a social media app at the same time. You get to comment and post about things. That's great. I bet it really drives the EV community very well then.
It does. Once you get into it, everybody starts talking about it, and you end up with all of these. You figure out who your people are, and then all of a sudden you end up realizing that there are a lot of people behind this, all working to make the experience as positive as possible.
Great. I believe we should get one more question in here. Sounds like you have been driving quite often with you and your new e-Golf there. So can you explain your driving experience behind the wheel of your EV? Did you just like fall in love with it as soon as you like hit the gas pedal and grip the steering wheel for the first time?
Sort of. I mean, one of the reasons why I chose the e-Golf in particular is that it drove the most like an internal combustion engine car. It coasts really easily. It just has a nice feel. It is so quiet, and that's sort of fascinating about it too, the way I can kind of sneak up on people almost when I'm driving down the street, and just being really careful. And somebody else another EV driver pointed this out to me, and I don't know if I would have noticed it myself, but he told me that he pointed out that the steering wheel doesn't vibrate the way your steering wheel vibrates with a regular combustion engine. There's something about that. And so he was describing that his hands, when he goes on long road trips, his hands and arms would be tired from that vibration. And it's just a very smooth, quiet ride. It's pretty fun to drive too. It accelerates really fast. But those are pretty much my experiences, that it drives like any other car. It's quiet. Other than it being kind of quiet, there's really not that much of a difference, except that I plug it in every night.
That's cool. That's a cool touch, like especially the steering wheel portion, because I've experienced that myself. Drive an older Mustang, and that bad boy is shaking all the time. So I bet that's quite a relief, knowing that the car, it might even feel more stable just while you're driving too. So that's nice. Another reason to switch.
That's right.
Yeah.
Once you make the switch, you don't really want to go back.
Definitely wishing to do this myself too. It's going to take a little bit of time for me, but we'll get there eventually. Okay. Let's see here. I believe it's Melissa, is it time for another pool here?
Yeah, let's take a look. So in your opinion, what's the biggest misconception on driving an electric vehicle? So that poll window is going to pop up, and go ahead and just add in your comment. So EVs are too expensive, there's the lack of charging stations available, limited range, or something else, and add that into the chat. I think that the biggest misconception, I think, is that limited range factor, because, having EVs be on the road for a little bit of time now, that, we did have that kind of earlier question that came up, that they had an under 100-mile range, and that could be pretty scary for some that have long commutes, especially in the Puget Sound area. So that was probably a misconception that has been easily rectified with all of the new cars that have come out and those extended ranges that are coming out these days.
Yeah, definitely. It's like range anxiety is probably going to be the least of your worries soon.
And it looks like we've got somebody saying the misconception is that they're manufactured poorly and can break easily. Well, I would think that, they're kind of like the iPhones, right? They're always the newest technology and really fantastic in terms of just the latest and greatest. So that could definitely be a misconception. But the majority of people on this call definitely think that limited range is a misconception that is out there in the public. And that the secondary one is going to be that lack of charging stations available, which we know that we're starting to get more and more charging stations kind of popping up all over the place, including our own PSC Up and Go charging station that we just opened in September in Lacey. So if you're headed down to Portland, you could stop by and play around with some of our newest chargers that are available right there on your way down to Portland.
I'm waiting to check that out myself too. And the last little touch up here. So one thing, people are always concerned about is the EV fees that are associated with them just for having the car. So customers will often ask about why the EV fees are higher. So exactly what you're paying for is, $225 in renewals and registration fees, which is broken down into $75 for transportation, electrification fee, and also just the flat $150 fee for electric car. As Leslie mentioned earlier, you are saving over time with a lot of things, like with your maintenance, fuel costs, and just overall lifehood of the EV itself. While the typical gas drivers, they're paying the taxes on the gas. So that's definitely something that's going to add up over time, especially if they're driving a lot. You might actually end up paying more driving a gas car compared to your EV, just over time with those taxes and fees that are involved. So the good news is that, the money the EV drivers are saving on fuel alone is definitely going to cover the cost of this increased fee for you. So there's no need to worry. So.
All right, so if you've got some questions for us, I know we've got the chat going on, but go ahead and add the questions to the Q&A portion so that we can start answering those. But in the meantime, you can send additional questions to electricvehicles@psc.com, or learn more and sign up for our Up and Go electric newsletter at psc.com/electriccars. Our newsletter comes out monthly, and oftentimes will feature things like some new consumer news, tips and tricks on EV, as well as information about our upcoming events. So make sure to sign up for that one. And if you haven't gotten a chance to play around with our calculator on our psc.com website, this one can help you really understand the value in switching over to an EV. So everywhere from how much it'll save you in your annual savings to, the average commute that you have and how much your gallon of gas will get you, so to speak. But so make sure to sign up for those, and then we're going to start answering some of those questions in just a second.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of questions in the chat, and since it's scrolling, we might miss some of those. So if you put a question in the chat that you want us to answer, we'll try to get to it today. If you can put it in the Q&A section. And once again, if we don't get to your question that's in the Q&A section, we can follow up via email. We can't follow up via email to the chat. So just a quick note on that. So we have lots of questions about how Leslie charges. So we'd love to hear that.
I plug my car into a regular wall plug with the cord that came with it, the e-Golf. So it's a trickle charge. It's considered level 1. I actually plug it in through a basement window and use a towel to keep the air from not seeping in in the winter time. But it works just fine. It charges, like I said, it charges overnight. It's a little bit at a time. I thought about going to a level 2 when I first bought the car, but figured let's try it this way at first and see how it goes before we make more of an investment. And I don't think that I need to go and invest further. It's just fine.
Great. If you did, can you talk a little bit more about the next level of charging, or anybody's welcome to answer this one?
Yeah, so if you're interested in more charging, so there's basically 3 types. So you have your level 1, as Leslie described, the trickle charging. The level 2 is going to be a 240 volt charger. So this is going to be either, it's going to look similar to like an electric dryer or even a stove. The outlet, you can either have a plug-in system or you can even have it hardwired to your service panel at home. This is going to be a bit faster charging, so you can probably see about, depending on the capability of the car and the output of the charger, you could probably see around like 15 to like 30 miles each hour for charging with that. And, there's various types of, brands out there. And then you can also find the level 2 chargers at charging stations as well. And then at charging stations, that's when it's going to kick up another notch as well. So they'll have level 2 and level 3, or known as fast charging. So that fast charging will get you charged nearly in about a half hour, 45 minutes, depending on the charging capability of the car and the capacity. So there's quite a few different charging rates that are available for people. So depending on what you like and what you're looking for, there's something for you.
Well, and just for awareness, Trevon, if you end up doing a level 2 charger at home, you can expect to pay between $1,500 and $1,800 for the charger and the installation. So that's something to take in consideration, if whether or not you want to do just a classic plug-in, or if you want to go into that level 2 charger so you can get faster charging at home.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Thank you.
Great. We have some questions about how do you know how much an electric car or a hybrid is costing to charge at home. So I did see that Dave shared that he has spent $850 in fuel costs for 2 years. And normally he would have spent $45 per week. So $2,200 for 2 years. So that's his comparison. How can people figure out how much it would cost for them?
Just for charging in general, right?
Charging at home, yeah.
Yeah. So, this could even help. We have we mentioned it a little earlier on our little calculator there. You can actually type in some of the stats and everything about your EV, and with our, electric rates. So that can definitely give you an estimated ballpark on what to expect to pay. Another thing is, depending on the type of charger you have, some of them have monitoring systems on how much you're actually charging. So that way you can take that data and see, it's like, hey, you know, in the month of September, I used 50 kilowatt hours or something just for charging, and then you could use that to see how much you actually paid for the charger or the car and charging alone. So definitely something that you could use. So there's different methods out there.
More questions about charging. Can any EV use any charging station? Specifically, they're wondering about Tesla, but that's a question we've got.
Typically, most of the charging stations are universal, like all the plugs. I know for certain that Tesla, you have to get an adapter to plug into most of the public charging stations. Other than that, I'm gonna have to look at my notes and cheat sheets to get the name of the plugs and everything, because they got like weird letters and stuff. Like they're titled like PN-15. So that's kind of hard to memorize from time to time. So oftentimes you might need an adapter, but most of the times you're usually safe, unless you have a Tesla.
My experience has been that the chargers out in the community have a choice. You can either get the CHAdeMO or the other one, and you just pick which one is right, and they're both connected to the same machine. You just plug in the right one.
Great. Let's see. A question about as more people need electricity to power their cars, how will that affect overall electricity demand? So this is more about, I guess, PSE's infrastructure, but I don't know if anybody can address that.
You know, I think what we're doing right now with our Up and Go electric pilot program is that we're really kind of trying to understand the effect of the grid as we speak. So we're in the process of really understanding not only how to affect residential, but also workplace, multifamily, our nonprofit. So we're working really diligently right now to actually partner with a lot of different places that might utilize charging so that we can understand the effect on the grid and kind of be proactive about it. These pilot programs have been going for a couple of years, and we plan on having them, you know, go for a few more years so that we can really fully understand the impacts that it'll take.
Great. I'm seeing a lot of the similar questions. I'm trying to pick out new questions, so just one second here. Okay, clarification on cost savings. Marta asked, do the cost savings include the extra that you pay for electricity if you're charging at home, for example? So do the savings take that into account? And a second question on that is, do charging stations charge a fee?
Yes, the savings that were described earlier, they had a side by how much you would pay for electricity to go a certain range versus how much you would pay cost in gas to go to a certain range. So the savings does calculate charging at home. Charging in public, yes, you do pay. And it varies by who you're going to charge with. The PSC Up and Go electric charging is at market rate, so we're not charging more or less than any of the other public charging companies out there. But it does vary by company. You might pay like kind of like when you get into a taxi, you pay a $4.95 drop fee. There's usually like a $4.95 or in some cases a little bit more hookup fee, and then you pay by the minute that you're there. The longest trip I took with the car was I went from Seattle to Portland to Astoria and then back to Seattle. And normally that would have cost me about probably $150, $200 worth of gas, just, and all of the charging that I stopped and did along my way added up to about $45 for the whole trip.
And then the charging station that's in Lacey, I was going to say the charging station in Lacey, it actually has We do 25 cents per minute for the level 2 charging, and then it's going to be about 4 cents a minute for, so 25 cents for the DC fast charging, and then 4 cents for the level 2 charging. So it's a really competitive rate down in Lacey.
And I also see in the chat that some people are pointing out that you can sometimes charge for free at different places. There are different companies that have business models that allow them to do that, or places that just want to provide it for free. So you don't have to pay always, but the norm, I think, is that you're going to pay a little something.
And a question about whether charging stations use renewable energy.
One of the benefits of our Up and Go electric charging stations is actually that we will do 100% green power renewable matching. So every kind of charging minute that's done, the electricity that's used at those chargers is matched to our green power program. So that it becomes that renewable energy match, so that it's 100% green powered. But not all charging stations will do that, but some are really hyper-focused on that kind of green initiative. So it really depends on the charging station you use.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know you talked about the kind of trial programs that PSE is running. Is there any plan for lowering the rates in the evening for charging?
Right now, we don't. Everybody pays the same amount. We don't do that sort of tiered timing system at PSE.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
One side benefit is that it can be a little bit more environmentally friendly, though. Sorry, Megan, I keep interrupting you. I was just saying, it's more environmentally friendly to charge at night, only because that is just generally helping the impact. And so that's something that you can do for the earth, as well as just to kind of help out the grid in general.
Great. Thanks. There's a question regarding the Washington state tax exemption. If you purchase a car that's over the $45,000 portion, can you claim part of that on your sales tax, or does the EV just need to be lower price when you purchase it?
Now, I don't know if I'm understanding the question, but when I bought my EV, I just did not pay sales tax. Mine was under $45,000, which meant I qualified for the Washington state incentive. If it's over $45,000, I think that you will pay sales tax, but you should talk to a tax advisor on how to handle that, like you do with all the other sort of sales taxes that you, I can't think of the word, offset.
Right. We have some questions about the battery manufacturing and battery disposal, and wondering if you guys have information on that.
I'm sorry, repeat the question. You said.
Oh, sorry about that. And we can also answer this one later in an email because it's a little bit off of the topic. But the question about battery manufacturing and disposal, and are the environmental benefits greater, or does that negate some of the benefits?
It's definitely a.
I can answer this one. Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
We could both go for it. I'll say my 1 cent. You say your 2 cents. So one thing that a lot of manufacturers are doing is they're trying to recycle the batteries. So after they take the batteries out, they'll use them for other purposes. So like battery storage or something of that nature, or breaking them down into their like individual cell units and then either disposing them properly or reusing those batteries for other purposes. So there's a pretty wide range of things that they're doing with them. They're not just straight up just disposing of them. So the batteries have a pretty long life cycle of being reused for other things.
Yeah, I was going to add in that,
Well,
you know, they actually power everything from like convenience to sports stadiums. And there's a lot of local companies that are even, you know, kind of fixing up old used EV batteries and kind of giving them a new life. So there's a lot of options when it comes to electric batteries that don't just involve throwing them away, which is fantastic for the environment and for everyone's wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, we are actually over time now. Sorry about that. But thank you everybody for joining us. And if we didn't get to your question during this segment, we will follow up with an email. Thanks for all the comments in the chat. We had some great feedback from drivers and people who've already experienced EVs. So thanks for everybody participating today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
All right.
And hopefully you get to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.